When we first met Julia, we didn't really know who she was. She worked in the fiction department, a bold-looking girl of about 27, with dark hair and a freckled face. She wore a scarlet sash, just tightly enough to define the shapeliness of her hips. This is the emblem of the Junior Anti-Sex League. Winston has been viewing her with suspicion because he disliked nearly all women, especially the young and pretty ones. They were always the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of the slogans, the amateur spies and nosers out of unorthodoxy. And it was Julia who gave him the impression of being a touch more dangerous than the others. It even crossed his mind that she might be an agent of the thought police. That is why it came as such a shock to receive a note from her. It had been risky business, but the message was clear. They were going to have to meet. At Victory Square, Winston receives his instructions, and before long, in spite of the danger that it poses, he travels the landscape where he encounters Julia in private for the very first time. Their lovemaking is a victory against the system. Their relationship develops as Julia introduces luxury items that the regime generally fails to provide for its citizens. The room above the bargain store serves as a meeting place away from the oppressive world that they live in, and it provides the space for their love to grow. Developments become all the more interesting and intense when O'Brien encounters Winston in the hallway at work. O'Brien, if you'll recall, is a member of the inner party, and so it is illuminating that he should provide Winston with his address. Winston and Julia are welcomed into his home, where Winston is instructed to read the Goldstein book. By this point, Julia's love for Winston has taken firm root, and by the sights and sounds of the washerwoman down below, Winston takes to his assigned task. But matters are not what they seem. The rug has been pulled from beneath them. In the midst of what had been thought to be a step towards progression, Winston's world, along with all that he had hoped for, are thrust into the realms of oblivion. Julia's arc begins almost entirely as a projection of Winston Smith's fears and resentments. When he first notices Julia, he interprets her through the ideologies that the party has cultivated. The scarlet-red sash causes him to assume that she is a rigid and fanatical loyalist. To him, she's probably an informer who could potentially destroy him. But the description collapses after they meet, and Julia reveals herself to be something quite different. She is clever, she's practical, and she is quietly rebellious. She is a woman who opposes the party not by theoretical ponderings, but through everyday acts of defiance and personal pleasure. As the narrative progresses, the contrast between Winston's intellectual conception of rebellion and Julia's tactical realism becomes all the more clear. She knows how to get on within the system, yet she is largely uninterested in abstract political truth. Julia's arc throughout the story is less a transformation in her character than it is in our perception of her. We move from Winston's misreading of her as a zealous agent of orthodoxy to the reality that she represents. Hers is a different kind of resistance. She is down to earth and pragmatic, revealing how much of the early narrative had been shaped by Winston's anxiety. It is noteworthy that Julia doesn't merely declare her love for Winston Smith, she repeatedly proves it through her actions. It was her who initiated the relationship. She takes care to organize their meetings in spite of the danger, and she even procures contraband luxuries. Julia is the one conducting all the practical labor required to make their private world exist at all, and that's where the train stops. Winston contributes thoughts and reflections, ideological rebellion, but Julia underscores the structure of the relationship itself. Because of this, we develop a protective sympathy towards Julia. We see that she's risking enormous danger because she genuinely desires intimacy and a shared life. That is why the thought of her being seized by the authorities feels especially disturbing. She has invested such humanizing effort in building the fragile refuge they inhabit. At the same time, Winston certainly desires Julia, and he feels exhilarated by their connection. Yet his emotional orientation is often directed elsewhere, towards history, toward truth, towards the dream of overthrowing the party, and toward figures like O'Brien who seem to embody deeper intellectual meaning. Julia, by contrast, is focused on the relationship itself, and it creates a quiet tension. We tend to care about Julia as a person whose devotion is demonstrated through effort and risk, while Winston sometimes treats the relationship as an element within a larger philosophical struggle against the system. A subtle moral quandary forms within the love story. Julia clearly cares for Winston in a direct and practical sense, while Winston's feelings are genuine, yet entangled with abstractions, leaving us uncertain as to whether he values Julia herself as much as he values what she represents in his formulations against the party. And there is tragedy taking shape within the mixture of it all. We know that Winston is, in fact, taking quite the careless leap when he follows Julia's directions into the countryside, but it's not the leap it first appears to be. Winston has lived his entire adult life under the party, yet the repressive conditions have produced a paradoxical condition. He knows intellectually that rebellion leads to destruction, but he has almost never experienced the machinery of punishment himself. People simply vanish. Syme disappears. Many are vaporized. Prisoners are marched. The consequences exist abstractly, but they do not unfold visibly against him. This allows Winston to maintain a strange, psychological distance from the danger. He knows the risk in theory, but the reality of it has not yet entered his own life. Julia's boldness exploits exactly that gap. She behaves as though small acts of defiance can be survivable if a person is clever enough, and that confidence temporarily infects Winston. When he follows her into the woods, he is not acting out of careful calculation, but from the intoxicating feeling that, for the first time, he is participating in something alive and human, and he can't resist. Incidentally speaking, O'Brien then appears to conflate the situation. Winston's fascination with O'Brien had begun long before the relationship with Julia became serious. The moment when Winston catches O'Brien's eye across the room is one of the earliest pushing points of the narrative momentum. Winston imagines that he has recognized a fellow dissenter, and that tiny moment of imagined solidarity becomes a seed of hope. From a party perspective, however, Winston is already ideologically compromised. His diary, his curiosity about the past, and his inability to perform orthodox enthusiasm marks him as unstable. And thus, the relationship with Julia has not created the rebellion in Winston's heart so much as it has given it physical form. Winston's diary entries are what define him as a thought criminal. But it is Winston's relationship with Julia that exposes him in a wide-open space of vulnerability. For these reasons, it probably isn't just a coincidence that his arrest occurs after the blossoming of his emotional life. The party is not merely interested in punishing isolated thoughts. It is interested in crushing the possibility of loyalty that competes with the state. Winston's intellectual dissent is the primary offense, but his love for Julia becomes a secondary but crucial threat, because it represents a bond that is stronger than fear. It's not going to work. The party must therefore wait until both elements are fully exposed. Only then can the arrest destroy not just the man's ideas, but also the emotional refuge that allowed those ideas to survive. This is part of what makes the tragedy so precise. Winston believes he is slowly discovering allies and building a hidden life, but in reality, the party has likely been observing the development of that life all along. The moment of arrest is timed so that the destruction will be total, eliminating both the rebellious mind and the human relationship that sought to give it courage. Julia stands as one of the most vital human figures in George Orwell's 1984. Not because she understands the system more clearly than Winston, but because she refuses to let it completely extinguish the instinct and will to live. Where Winston seeks truth, history, and intellectual coherence, Julia insists on preserving the immediate realities of human existence, the joys of pleasure, secrecy, laughter, and love. Her rebellion is practical rather than philosophical, grounded in the belief that even within a totalitarian world, there must remain small territories where the party cannot extend its slithering tentacles. She does not dream of overthrowing the regime or reforming society. Instead, she quietly subverts it by insisting on the stubborn persistence of ordinary human desires. In that sense, Julia represents a different but equally important form of resistance. She embodies the human drive to continue living fully even under oppressive conditions. And you can believe that through her, the novel reminds us how the fight for freedom's not only a struggle of ideas, but a struggle to preserve the simple and fragile experiences that make life truly worth living. Booktime Learning is dedicated to the study of writing and literature. If this video has been instructive or enjoyable in any way, please consider clicking the like button and/or subscribing. And thank you for watching.